Daniel Messel will find out next month how much time he will spend in prison for the murder of IU student Hannah Wilson last April. A jury convicted Messel this week, and as Becca Costello reports, Wilson's family says this conviction is an important step as they work toward healing and closure.
It's been more than a year since Hannah's body was found in a vacant lot in rural Brown County. Her parents worked closely with prosecutors every step of the way as they built their case against Daniel Messel, all culminating in 6 days of emotional witness testimony. Robin and Jeff Wilson attended every day of the trial, seeing surveillance footage and bloody clothing that prosecutors used to prove their case. They say it was difficult to get through, but it was important not to miss it.
It was important that myself and our family, Hannah's friends, were here to speak for her because an evil person took that right away from her.
About 25 people joined Hannah's parents in the courtroom during the trial, including Hannah's stepmom and her younger sister, Haley. But a lot of support came from outside of the courtroom as well, from friends and family following the trial from all over the country.
We had a huge outpouring of support from social media and all our friends through Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't have missed it for the world.
It's not officially over yet. Most of Hannah's family will come back to Brown County on September 22nd to find out how long 50-year-old Messel will serve in prison. He faces up to 85 years. For Indiana News Desk, I'm Becca Costello.
And Becca Costello joins us now. Becca, you followed the case inside the courtroom. I understand Daniel Messel faces up to 85 years in prison, but how is that sentence actually determined?
So murder in Indiana has a sentence of between 45 and 65 years. But in this case, jurors decided that Messel, since he's been convicted of other felonies in the past, they can add up to 20 years onto that sentence. So that's where we get to that 85 maximum for Daniel Messel.
So why aren't prosecutors seeking life without parole or the death penalty in this case?
Well, those sentences are both options in Indiana for murder cases, but it has to fit one of 17 aggravating circumstances. And those are things that prosecutors will look at. For example, if the victim was a child or if the victim was sexually assaulted. But none of those circumstances fit this particular case, so those weren't options.
So, as we said, you were there in the courtroom. What ultimately convinced the jury of Messel's guilt, do you think?
Well, prosecutors kept coming back to one really key piece of evidence, and that was Daniel Messel's cell phone, which was actually found at the scene of the crime, very close to Hannah Wilson's body. And they say they were able to identify who Daniel Messel was, and that led him to his house, where they found Hannah's blood spattered over his car and on his clothing. So they say if they hadn't found that phone, they likely wouldn't have been able to find Messel as quickly as they did.
So now Messel pleaded not guilty, though. So what did he argue to try to prove his innocence?
That's right. Now, Messel didn't actually take the stand, so he didn't address the jury at all during the trial, but his defense attorney kept coming back to this unknown DNA. This is DNA that they found at the scene of the crime and on Messel's clothing, but it didn't match Hannah Wilson and it didn't match Daniel Messel either. So their question was, who does that DNA belong to? They were implying that there was some third person involved who did kill Hannah, but they couldn't offer any suggestions about who that would be. And so they were saying prosecutors didn't do a complete investigation, that they should have followed up on some of that DNA, and that they were negligent and not doing so. And ultimately they said that they weren't sure what his motivation would be, and that's just one of those things that we may never know. Why did Hannah get in the car? What was his motivation for killing her? And those are things we may never know.
All right, well, thank you very much, Becca. Appreciate it.